What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. So I had to continue where I left off, part 3, talking about Canelo Alvarez potentially facing Liam Smith. Now, I told you in the first two videos my standpoint. A lot of people agreed and immediately understood where I was coming from. Now, the thing that's the problem with boxing is you have a lot of boxing fans who are fake. They're so prideful that they're wolves in sheep's clothing. They appear and attempt to act like they have a certain standpoint. But then when you break it down and lay it on the table, that's not really their outlook. It's only their outlook if it's against a fighter they don't like. So if you're pro Canelo, then he's exempt from that same rule. But if you hate fighter X, Y, and Z, then all of a sudden that rule applies. And they have these fake standpoints and they don't apply it to their favorite fighter or the fighter they like. I told you guys in the previous video. Some people, oh, you just hate Canelo. Listen. If you hate a fighter, then I told you guys before, you're not going to care about having integrity in what you report, right? If you just purely hate that person, you don't care about things like that. You would just want to make that person look bad, basically. And that's not the situation is. Canelo versus Liam Smith, which I will explore further in this video to make it crystal clear why I'm not on board with this particular fight. And the biggest reason is the sequence of events. You have Canelo, who became lineal middleweight champion by beating Miguel Cotto, and he held those belts for about 6 months. He knew in December that Gennady Golovkin, he knew before he fought Cotto that Golovkin was the mandatory for Cotto, so he knew if he were to beat Miguel Cotto, that would then become his mandatory. But moving on, in December, he sat down Team Canelo, Team Triple G, and the WBC, and they had an agreement that they reached that they were to build a fight between Canelo and Triple G for September. And to do this, they were going to have voluntary defenses of their titles because they both are belt holders, Canelo and Triple G, right? So they could, the stipulation was they could fight anyone under the sun that they wanted to fight, and Canelo chose a welterweight, which is Amir Khan, and Gennady Golovkin fought Dominique Wade. And there's some fans who are trying to throw Golovkin under the bus. We're talking about Canelo versus Liam Smith. A lot of fans, what they do is they have these arguments, but they're not even comparable. Because if you break down the voluntary defenses that both fighters have, yes, one guy has a bigger name, but he was also the guy who was smaller. Golovkin, at the very least, even though Dominique Wade didn't have a name, he was fulfilling an IBF mandatory. So at some point, Golovkin, to keep his IBF belt that he got from David Lemieux, he would have had to fight Dominique Wade, who was in that mandatory positioning, right? So that's one difference. Furthermore, Golovkin fought somebody in his division, a middleweight. Canelo didn't. Canelo didn't fight a middleweight. He didn't fight a junior middleweight. He fought a guy who had durability issues at 135 and 140, stoppage losses it, and he only had 3 fights at welterweight, and he forced him to move up to the full 155. So again, back to the wolves in sheep's clothing, I see comments like, oh, Mayweather, he drugged Juan Manuel Marquez up all these weight divisions, and that's why he beat him so easily, right? But there's been no one in the history of boxing other than Floyd that has dominated Marquez for 12 rounds out of 12 rounds. So I firmly believe that it wasn't even Floyd Mayweather missing the catch weight, which he did miss and pay a penalty. I don't think that was the reason Marquez lost, which is why you didn't want to see why Marquez never really called for a rematch. You know what I mean? Marquez knew Floyd beat him fair and square, right? You know what I mean? He knew he beat him based on skill, because when Pacquiao had controversial fights with Marquez, he disputed it. He even wore shirts like, oh, I beat Pacquiao twice, and he thought he beat Bradley and things like that. But there's no one else who's beaten Marquez soundly like that. Chris John, none of them dudes beat him 12 rounds out of 12 rounds like Floyd did. But back to my point. The point is this. People, they say, oh, Floyd, he drugged Marquez up. And Floyd is considered a guy at welterweight who's not even the strongest. He was coming off a 21-month layoff. Marquez actually called Floyd out while Floyd was retired, which is a fact that they don't tell you. And you look at Canelo, who's bigger than Amir Khan. He's stronger than Amir Khan, and he's younger than Amir Khan. And Amir Khan has been knocked out before. Look at Floyd fighting Marquez at a catchweight, they say, oh, Floyd drug him up, and they leave comments like that. Who's stopped Marquez before? I can tell you who stopped Amir Khan before. So you tell me what's fair. So if your standpoint is you don't like to see when a fighter jumps up, even though Marquez called Floyd out, then why on earth would you like Canelo fighting Amir Khan? But that's who he chose. The other difference is Gennady Golovkin, when he fought Wade, he blew him out of the water. I was at the fight, right? The first round, I think he had 2 knockdowns, and then he finished him off and showed that he didn't belong in the same ring with Golovkin in the second round. Easy work. Good boyed him, right? That's not what happened with Canelo. So again, the chronological order. When Amir Khan, who had everything stacked against him, the judges, at the time of the stoppage, I had Amir Khan winning. I thought he won the first 4 rounds by his speed and outboxing. Looked sharp. He just couldn't seem to hurt Canelo. And Canelo slowed him down with some body shots and capitalized in rounds 5. And he started slowing down more and more. And then he got brutally knocked out in the 6th round. But I still had Khan winning 4 rounds out of the 6 that they did have. And then he got brutally knocked out. That's not what happened with Golovkin. So stop comparing Dominique Wade to Canelo versus Khan, because it's a whole different circumstance. Even deeper than that, the only reason Golovkin fought a guy like Dominique Wade is because Team Canelo requested, and it was approved or agreed upon, that they had a voluntary defense, right? So had they not suggested that and they said, hey, we'll fight you next, Golovkin, we fight you in May, then there wouldn't be no issue about who Triple G was fighting, because that person wouldn't have been a Dominique Wade, it would have been Canelo. So completely different circumstances. And again, Triple G in his voluntary defense didn't struggle at all. There was no struggle. It was a one-sided fight. Canelo's fight wasn't one-sided. So that's one thing. Then you look at the sequential order, the chronological order. Why it looks so bad for Canelo is because after the Cotto fight, they talk about Golovkin. Oh, I'll put the gloves on right now. After the Khan fight, he knocks him out. And then he says, oh, we Mexican, we don't fuck around. I invited Golovkin in the ring. I don't fear nobody. And then a week later, you vacate and drop the belt. Say, oh, I don't want to be pressured. And we haven't heard anything since. Tom Loeffler has said that there's no real new forthcoming information about Canelo versus Triple G. So to me, all signs point to this fight not happening next. Because, again, there's an incentive if you stayed champion and fought Golovkin. So why would you drop the belt? The only way I could see you doing that is because, one, you didn't want the pressure of having a certain day. But more importantly, I think Team Canelo, they know that they would make the WBC look bad and be showing favoritism if they forced Golovkin to come down to 55. You can't do that. The WBC has to, their belt says it could be middleweight. So if Canelo wants to come in at 155, then he can come in at 55. But you can't force Golovkin to come to 155, and Team Golovkin wasn't having it. They're like, we're not coming down 55 for Canelo. You could say they contradicted themselves from what they said about coming down for Floyd, whatever, but the WBC can't enforce that because it's for a middleweight title. The parties have to agree to that, and it doesn't look like Team Triple G was willing to. Every interview I've really seen with Triple G, he says it's bad for business, and no, middleweight is 160. Same thing with Abel and Tom Loeffler. So they weren't on board with it. But by dropping the belts, then to negotiate the fight, you could try to flex that A-side power. Like, hey, if you want to fight me, you already have the belt. If you want to fight me and you want my namesake, then you got to come down to Canelo weight. That's the only way you could do it. But you can't do it without making the WBC look bad, because the WBC can't force Golovkin to come to 155 of Canelo weight. So just the order of operations in which this was handled. If he beat Cotto and just dropped the belt, said, hey, this is something I want to do and want to accomplish, I'll move up to middleweight when I'm ready, then it would be cool. It wouldn't be this Tupac album, All Eyes on Me. But when you say put the gloves back on, we Mexican, we don't fuck around, Canelo versus Triple G will happen, I don't fear no man, then yeah, the pressure is on you, because this is a guy that's being considered and primed as the future of boxing, right? He's the biggest star, barring Mayweather and maybe even Pacquiao. He might even supersede Pacquiao's level of stardom at this point. I don't know. But barring Mayweather, he's clearly the biggest. So, of course, there's going to be a spotlight on him, especially when him and Team, they say things in interviews and make statements that amplifies it. Like Oscar De La Hoya post-fight after they knocked out Amir Khan. He says, "Golovkin, are you there? Tell Golovkin to answer his phone tomorrow. I'll be calling." And then he vacates. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't look good. So let me further talk about this Liam Smith situation, and I'm gonna school some of you guys. I didn't want to have to do this, but y'all made me, in the words of Roy Jones Jr. Now, the funny thing, I've been covering boxing long enough to see how it works and see the detractors and what they do. They try to, oh, ego, you hate Canelo because I'm saying something, that I'm speaking my opinion. It has nothing to do with hate. And the funny thing is, oh, ego, you hate him, you're racist, you have a grudge against him, you hate Oscar, whatever you guys want to say. But this is an article not written by me, and the title is Canelo Alvarez is failing to fill the gap left by Floyd Mayweather's absence. And it was published by Forbes, Forbes.com, credible website. And Yahoo Sports also published this on their website, the same exact article, which I'll try to show you guys in the video. So don't make it like this is an ego thing. The whole world of boxing, unless you're a radical fan, they're talking about this maneuver and why it's not good. You know what I mean? Don't make it like it's just ego is singling out somebody. And let's talk more about the subject of this video. Now, let me just kill this quick excuse out. Some people are saying Canelo, oh, he's already fought Mayweather, he's already fought Lara and Gulo, which is all true. Boxing is a sport of what have you done for me lately, and he's still paving his way, because you look at Canelo's best wins, some of them have been controversial. You can't say Khan, I don't consider Khan one of his best wins. It was maybe one of his most brutal knockouts, but not one of his most best wins, because Khan had no experience above 147, and he had durability issues. So I would say Cotto is probably his best win, and some of the other ones were controversial. He lost to Floyd clearly. Edeslani Lara was controversial. Trout was a little bit controversial for some. I thought he won that fight. Things like that. And another excuse I'm hearing is just his age is, oh, he's 25. But let's take a trip down memory lane. Adrian Broner, the problem. Man, you know, AB. See, Adrian Broner is currently 26. When he fought Paulie Malignaggi was in 2013. So he jumped up 2 weight classes from Gavin Reese at 135 to Paulie Malignaggi at 147. Now, some people are going to say, oh, but Paulie can't punch. He still was a champion, and Paulie Malignaggi was still 2 divisions higher. And as you could see from the result, Paulie Malignaggi was game at that time, because that's why Broner only won a split decision. So you got to give credit to Broner, who was 24 and jumped up 2 weight classes. And then after facing and beating probably one of the lightest named punchers at welterweight, he fought Maidana. And he showed heart in that fight, even though he clearly lost that fight. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to hear this excuse about age. Mike Tyson was like 21 when he became heavyweight champion of the world. Floyd was in his early 20s when he became champion, and he's not lost since. And he's been on a run ever since with some good performances over great competition. You know what I'm saying? So at this level, when you become a champion, when you're touted as the future of boxing and things like that, it's really all eyes on you. You're going to have the bullseye on your back. People are wanting to see what you're made of. That's just the way it goes. So 25 is young, but you can also look at that as an advantage, because Miguel Cotto wasn't 25 when he fought him. You know what I mean? James Kirkland, all these guys, Lara, all these guys are probably older than Gulo. All these guys are probably older. So youth can also, when you have almost 50 fights and you're a good fighter, you know what I mean, youth can actually be an advantage. So I don't want to hear that. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the Liam Smith situation, and I'm going to take some of you guys to school. Why I personally don't want to see this fight next. Because like I said in the previous video, I really do believe Liam Smith, he is the least accomplished out of all the names. You got to look at it. Canelo's fighting in between basically 2 divisions, 155 and 160. So if you're going to, you already dropped the middleweight belt. If you're going to fight at 154, why would you fight a guy who really has no bodies on his, he doesn't have the body count on his resume? None of these names really ring bells. Now, you got to look at this, and this might be news to some of you. Liam Smith fought for the vacant WBO title in 2015 at the end of the year, October. So he's a new champion. He's only been champion since October of 2015, right? He fought John Thompson, who has a record of 17-2 losses, and both of those losses came via KO. Only 6 knockouts, just like Willie Monroe. 32% knockout ratio, so not much power. This is who Liam Smith beat to become the WBO champion, right? And he's now fighting Willie Monroe this weekend on that Showtime Provodnikov-Molina card, right? But this is the guy that Liam Smith had to beat, right? And Liam Smith knocked him out. Now, look a little bit further. He fought him in 2015. The year before, he fought Frank Galarza and got knocked out cold. He got TKO'd by Liam Smith. He got knocked out cold. I remember I watched that fight. The link will be in the description. And if you remember that fight, I can't show you for copyright reasons, but it was round 2 and the bell just rang. Frank Galarza literally just walked up to him, landed his first punch, buckled his legs, and down he went. And he never recovered. So it was a second round knockout of John Thompson. So you got to keep in mind, follow me. This is the guy on the ground that Liam Smith beat a year later after Frank Galarza, who actually lost after this fight to that guy Hurd, I think on Showtime also. The guy on the ground, this is who Liam Smith beat for the vacant WBO belt. Again, he's a new champion. He just fought in October, fought this guy and knocked him out, right? And you look in between the Frank Galarza knockout, he fought Ricardo Pinell, who's actually in the Bay Area. I actually know him, so shout out to Ricardo. He beat him via unanimous decision. I don't know this guy, Stan. He beat him split decision. And then Brandon Adams, who's a good, he does a lot of sparring, work with a lot of top names and stuff, so he's a solid prospect. So he had 3 win streak, and then he got knocked out by Liam Smith, right? So again, when we're talking about pedigree, who is Liam Smith? Liam Smith fought for a vacant belt and fought a guy who had just got knocked out, actually KO'd by Frank Galarza just a year prior, right? So I have to see more from Liam Smith to believe he is ready for an elite level fight like with the Canelo, because everything changes at that level, because Canelo is a rock star, he's a superstar. So you're not just fighting, you have to be able to deal with the media pressure. Like, this would be obviously Liam Smith's biggest fight to date. So you have all the cameras in front of you and the HBO camera crew. You have to be able to train, but still make time to do that if they do a face-off, media, press tours, stuff like that. This is the big leagues. So I just haven't seen Liam Smith at that level. Beefy. Hardcore rapper, but he's beefy. I haven't seen him at that level to say he's ready for that type of exposure and that type of fight. Yes, he's a champion, but again, who's he beat? He beat John Thompson, who got knocked out by Frank Galarza. Again, link in the description, you can watch that. Now, this is even worse than the whole, what I just revealed right there. Let's take the belt back. The WBO belt. The reason it was vacant and Liam Smith was able to, we're going to do a little bit of time travel, like Marty McFly, Back to the Future. So the WBO belt was initially held by, and there's articles, you can Google it, just type Demetrius Andrade stripped. It was held by Demetrius Andrade, an Olympian, and I believe he beat Vanes Matarosin for that belt. And the reason he got stripped was because of inactivity. So you look at Andrade, right? This was pretty much the rightful owner of the WBO belt. He was dealing with some issues with his promoter, Banner Boxing. So he was sidelined. He was supposed to fight the Charlo brother, but he felt he got lowballed. And he was dealing with Banner Boxing, some promotional issues, not happy with, I guess, how he was being promoted. So he was on the sidelines. He had no fight. So because of inactivity, he got stripped of his belt. But we're talking about a guy who represented the USA, and he was in the Olympics. And no one beat him for the belt, right? It's not like someone beat his ass and took his belt. He lost it being on the sidelines, dealing with promoter issues and not having any fights within a certain amount of time. So he lost his WBO belt. But again, Demetrius Andrade, I just watched him spar. I'll put the footage up. I'm gonna try to put it up soon. I gotta get that up. That reminds me. But this is a quality level of opposition, and he lost his belt again on the sidelines. So that's how the WBO belt became available for this man, Liam Smith. Now, let me really blow your mind and give you guys the full story. So Demetrius Andrade was the WBO champion, right? He got stripped due to inactivity. Not that someone beat him, but because of inactivity. So that's per the rules. They stripped Demetrius Andrade. Fair is fair. Now, Liam Smith and Austin Trout were actually the highest ranking fighters in line for that vacant belt, right? And instead of Liam Smith versus Austin Trout, they gave the fight to John Thompson, who was on the list but beneath Austin Trout, which is why Austin Trout, if you guys just type in Austin Trout suing, and I don't want to click on a bunch of articles for copyright reasons, that's why you'll see Austin Trout sues WBO over Smith-Thompson title fight. You'll see a bunch of articles. Austin Trout has a pending lawsuit because he believes that between the WBO and Frank Warren, who manages Liam Smith, he believes that some kind of side deal was worked to X him out of the picture because he was next in line, higher ranked than John Thompson, and he did not get his opportunity at Demetrius Andrade's old belt. So that's why this Frank Warren versus Austin Trout sues WBO over Smith, blah, blah, blah. Austin Trout files lawsuit for missed opportunity to fight, etc. And we're waiting on an outcome. You know, legal processes take a while. So let me backtrack and connect the dots for you. Liam Smith didn't fight Demetrius Andrade. Demetrius Andrade was stripped and lost it due to inactivity. His belt became available based on him being stripped. Now, Liam Smith did not fight the guy he was supposed to fight, the guy who was in the same top 2 and 3 positioning for that belt, which would have been Austin Trout. Instead, they skipped him. Now, you can't skip somebody if somebody turns down the fight. But obviously, if Austin Trout is suing them, then he didn't turn down the fight. For example, a recent example, Errol Spence Jr. is the mandatory in line for Kell Brook's IBF belt. Errol Spence was ready to fight Konstantin Ponomarev, but between Team Ponomarev, they said they're not ready, or he got hurt, or whatever the situation is, they opted not to. So now it looks like Errol Spence Jr. may fight Leonard Bundu. That's how it works. But Liam Smith and Austin Trout, they were supposed to fight, which is why he's suing. And he didn't get his opportunity to fight. So when I talk about pedigree, this is what I'm talking about. Because Liam Smith, had he fought the rightful person he was supposed to fight, which is Austin Trout, then to me, there's no guarantee that he would have been the champion. Maybe he beats Trout, maybe he doesn't. But all I do know is if you look at John Thompson and his box rec, tell me who he's fought and who he's beat. He has 6 knockouts. He's been stopped twice. Once at the time that he got stopped once by Frank Galarza at the time where he fought Liam Smith. So he still had been stopped a year prior. 32% knockout ratio. He's 6'1", but he doesn't carry much power, 27 years old. Versus Austin Trout. I don't even really have to do this, but you look at Austin Trout and there's no comparison. His resume versus a John Thompson. He pretty much in all fields would trump a John Thompson. He has more fights, 30-3, never been stopped. Like you look at John Thompson, who's been stopped twice. His 2 losses came from both stoppages. Trout has not, he's lost, but he's never been stopped. He has more KOs, higher percentage, 52%. He's a little bit 3 years older, and he's still pretty tall with a long reach. And then when you get to the resume, I mean, he fought Jamal Charlo. I was at that fight live. He gave Jamal Charlo all he could handle and run for his money in a very competitive fight. And Jamal Charlo is clearly the better of the 2 brothers with punching power. He was bigger than Trout, etc. You look at his resume, he fought Edeslandi Lara. He lost that fight, but he still fought him. He fought Canelo. He beat Miguel Cotto. So what are we really? He beat Canelo's brother, Rigoberto Alvarez. So again, what I'm saying to you guys is, had Liam Smith, these are the types of tests that I need to see so I can see how good Liam Smith is and see if he's ready for that level. So had he fought Austin Trout like he was supposed to, then, and he beat him convincingly, then that would have been a different situation. But I don't know that he can beat Austin Trout. You know what I mean? Because Austin Trout just went in there with an undefeated Jermall Charlo, who clearly has more power than Liam Smith. He's 6 foot, 73.5-inch reach, and he has a 75% knockout ratio. And Austin Trout just went the distance with him. So you look at Liam Smith, 75% knockout ratio at 6 foot, 73.5-inch reach, and Austin Trout went the distance. I was at that fight. He went, and it was competitive. So I don't do triangle theories, but you just simple mathematics. There's a shot that Austin Trout could beat a guy like Liam Smith, who really doesn't have any name. You know what I mean? So he's shorter than the Charlo brother, and he has a 54% knockout ratio with just about as many fights, 24 fights. And then Jermall Charlo has a 70. Well, let me click. Jermall Charlo has a 75% knockout with the exact same amount of fights, 24 fights. So again, if Austin Trout can go, I don't care what about triangle theories, but if Austin Trout can go the distance with Jermall Charlo, who is an up-and-coming lines only, then to me that stipulates there's a strong chance that Liam Smith could at the very least be competitive, and this man could win. But he was never given that opportunity. They stepped over him, and the fight with John Thompson was instead made. So again, if Canelo picks Liam Smith, this is going to be terrible, because Liam Smith is unproven. Even guys like Vanes Martirosyan's coming off a Lara loss, but it still is more meaningful, even without a belt, than beating a guy like Liam Smith with a belt, because we know Vanes Martirosyan's pedigree. That's my whole point. So when I talk about pedigree, this is what I am talking about. You look at Vanes Martirosyan, he's coming off a loss, but you can't tell me that he doesn't have a better resume. He has 21 knockouts, he has 40 fights, he's been in there with Lara twice, Jermell Charlo, Willie Nelson, Ishe Smith knocked him down, Demetrius Andrade, you know what I mean? Casa Uma, who gave Triple G probably one of his toughest fights. He's been in there with some live bodies. So that's what I'm talking about when it comes to resumes and when it comes to pedigrees. A guy off of a loss is still more decorated and dangerous to a Canelo than a guy, in my opinion, who has a belt, because I've seen more from this guy. And it's not even just him. You can look at any of these guys, Demetrius Andrade. You can look at any of these guys' knockout percentage and everything. Lara rematch. These are all competitive fights. Julian Williams, 68% knockout ratio, 6-1. These are all good stylistic fights. So again, based on the chronological order of the way things have played out with Canelo fighting a welterweight, after asking for a voluntary defense and then saying all this stuff post-fight, we Mexican, we don't fuck around, then vacating your belt. If you were to fight Liam Smith, it's not looking good, because again, Liam Smith got a vacant belt by beating a guy, and it wasn't even the guy who was supposed to be in that position. That guy was Austin Trout. Let me know what you guys think. That pretty much wraps it up. Drop it in the comment section. Make sure you like my video as always. Hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video is Ego signing off.
You don't feel it, then it must be too real to touch. You'll never in your life try to knock the truth. The illest shit ever. Get ready, cause this is about to get heavy.
Trying to keep me out, trying to censor what I say, cause they don't like what I'm talking about. So what's wrong with the media today?
Prove I'm lying if I ain't correct.